a lieutenant in the Air Force, and I was stationed in Ohio. And I was a pilot, and we didn't do a lot of additional duties, but we had too many pilots. This was in the Cold War. It was post-Vietnam. There was no hot war going on. So I found myself grounded for a year, and part of that involved doing these additional duties. So I got a phone call one time, come down to the base commander's office. Found out that I was going to be in charge of a funeral detail for 3 months. You're thinking, this is supposed to be a humorous speech. Funerals are deadly serious. The judges are that appropriateness of topic. Let's take some points on here. Well, I can tell you, in the face of adversity, sometimes we can find some humor. So I had this detail, had no training whatsoever. I think they gave me a sheet of paper that said something like, this is how this goes. Theoretically, I was in charge, although we all know the reality of it was that I had a sergeant and he was in charge. And I asked him about this, and I said, I really have no idea what I'm doing. He said, Lieutenant, don't worry about it. I'll take care of things. You just do what I tell you to do. And I had about 17 other guys. We had 7 who were issued these World War II era M1 rifles for the 21-gun salute. And we had 6 that were pallbearers, and we had a bus driver. And I think we had a few others hangers on it. We even had a bugler sometimes. And we went around southern Ohio, northern Kentucky, and parts of West Virginia doing funerals. I did 10 funerals. These were for deceased military members or current military members who had died in the course of duty. None of these were wartime deaths. So we went lots of places. This one day, we went to Virgie, Kentucky. It's in coal mining country. There's a river that just kind of winds its way through that country. And on one side is a mountain. It's about like that. And the river, the road, a small piece of level ground, and another mountain. And we got there for the 3rd day of the funeral. About an hour before it ended. We're standing outside the church waiting for our part in this somber ceremony. The preacher in that church was a sing-song preacher. He sang his way through the entire service. Everything was singing. And we could hear this through the open doors. And it was a warm day. And from time to time, men would leave their wives in the church, and they would come out, and they'd hit pocket flasks, and they would take a drink and smoke a cigarette and visit with us, and then they'd go back in. Well, this went on for about an hour, and then it was our turn. We brought this casket out and loaded it in the hearse. Now, this detail had really no sense about who did what. The pallbearers, this was a very heavy casket. The pallbearers were just a mix of guys. These guys did all kinds of other jobs. None of them were full-time in this business. They were cooks and mechanics, and they did all kinds of things. And this one person I remember was a Puerto Rican kid. He was from Puerto Rico, and he was small. And he was probably 17 years old and had never seen anything like this before. And as we carried this casket up the side of this mountain to the gravesite, he was right to my left here. And I think there were 6 pallbearers, and the riflemen had taken their position up the hill a little bit. And the sergeant was in charge of the riflemen, and I was in charge of this part. And there was a tent there with some family. They were all very sad. The person we were performing honors for was a young woman who had died on active duty. Not in the course of combat, but just on active duty. So it was a very sad thing, and we were all very somber and very serious business. And I was theoretically in charge of this. And this grave, the funeral director told us, had been blasted out of solid rock. It was this was I'm talking, it was pretty, I don't know how they really found a level spot on this. And they had blasted this grave out. And you know how you've been to funerals and you've seen the green carpet. They kind of cover the dirt up with it, and sometimes they put it over the opening. And we had to bring this casket. We brought this casket in, and I had to help them carry it. There was a bar at the back to carry it, but normally I didn't do that. But this was so heavy they couldn't get it up the hill, so I helped them. This young Puerto Rican kid was right next to him. He wasn't very big, so I had to help them get this thing up the hill. Some of these guys were big, strong guys. They were all probably 17, 18, 19 years old, all airmen. And we finally positioned this over the opening, the grave. And suddenly I realized this kid next to me was gone. says, did I make this up? But I didn't see him fall. But I looked down, and there he was, looking up at me from the bottom of this grave, and his eyes were like this big around.